The sky above Velthera burned orange. A single human ship, battered, smoking, nearly torn apart, screamed through the clouds and crashed deep into the jungle moon's thick green forests. Trees snapped like twigs, and fire followed in its wake. The jungle went silent. In the shadow of twisted metal and fire, a small group of humans pulled themselves from the wreck. Bloodied, bruised, but breathing. Commander Elias Grant stood tall despite the pain in his side. He looked around, eyes sharp, hand on his belt. Only 8 of his crew had survived. That meant 22 were gone. The enemy had chased them across 5 star systems, the Zarn Dominion, the largest, most powerful alien empire in the galaxy, wanted no survivors. This moon was their last chance. "What now, sir?" asked Lieutenant Ramos, a young engineer with a shaky voice. Elias didn't answer right away. He was listening. There. A sound, low clicking like stone tapping on stone. Then came the rustle of many legs moving over leaves. "Eyes up," Elias whispered. Shapes moved in the trees. Insects, but not small. These were tall, armored, and deadly. Urith drones. 6-limbed, sharp-eyed, and strong enough to tear a man in two. The jungle had found them. One by one, the drones stepped out. Their black carapaces gleamed in the firelight. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their message was clear. "You are not welcome." The humans raised their hands. "Don't shoot," Elias said firmly. "We're not here to fight." The drones circled them quickly and forced them to their knees. No resistance. The humans knew they couldn't win. Soon a larger figure arrived, taller than the others, with markings of deep blue and gold across her chest. The Queen, Queen Jelenka, moved with grace and power. Her 4 main eyes stared down at the humans like a scientist studying a new kind of bug. She spoke in her own clicking tongue. One of the drones replied. The humans couldn't understand, but Elias watched carefully. Then, without a word, the Queen raised one long arm. A drone stepped forward, holding a sharp spear. Elias knew what was coming. Execution. The Dominion would reward the Hive for removing more humans, but he did something none of them expected. He spoke in her language. It wasn't perfect. His words clicked awkwardly, but they were clear enough. "We come not for war. We come to teach, to share, to survive." The Queen's body froze. So did the drones. Jelenka leaned closer. Her antennae twitched. She replied slowly in her native tongue. "A soft-tongued ape speaks the Hive's song." "Curious." Elias nodded. "I learned. We listen before we act, unlike the Dominion." There was silence. The Queen stood up straight. Her eyes narrowed. "Teach? Share? You are broken, hunted things." Elias looked up, meeting her gaze without fear. "Even broken things can shine in the right hands." A long moment passed. Then, Jelenka made a strange sound, almost like a laugh, though no one had ever heard a Urith Queen laugh before. She turned away, clicking an order. The drones pulled the humans to their feet. "You will live," she said in slow, accented standard. "1 moon cycle. Show me what makes humans so special. Then, we shall see." The Queen disappeared into the trees. The drones followed, guiding the humans deeper into the Hive. The walk through the jungle was long and tense. The forest was thick, and glowing blue flowers lit the path in strange patterns. Strange creatures watched from the branches. Finally, they reached the Hive, a city carved into a mountainside, made of black stone and glowing resin. It pulsed with life. Drones flew, crawled, and worked in perfect harmony. But something was changing now. Jelenka had made a choice no queen had made in generations: keep outsiders alive. And Elias Grant had done something no human had done before, spoken to the Queen in her own tongue. The soldiers were placed in a guarded chamber. It was not a prison, but it wasn't freedom either. As they sat on the floor, Ramos whispered, "Do you really think this will work, Commander?" Elias leaned against the wall, staring at the Hive's glowing ceiling. "It has to," he said. Because if it doesn't, then humanity is out of time. He didn't say it out loud, but he knew it in his heart. They were not just survivors anymore. They were seeds of something new, and this strange moon might be the only soil left where it could grow. The Ureth hive buzzed with quiet confusion. No one had ever heard of a queen letting outsiders live. Drones moved through the tunnels whispering, with clicking sounds. Some were afraid, some were curious, and some watched the humans very closely. In a large chamber lit by glowing stones, Elias Grant and his crew sat around a warm fire. They had been given food, strange jelly-like cubes full of protein. It didn't taste good, but it kept them alive. Ramos poked at one of the jelly cubes with a stick. "I miss bread," he mumbled. Elias gave him a small smile. "I miss coffee." One of the drones entered silently. Its eyes glowed green. It placed a tray of clean water beside them, and then stood still, watching. Elias nodded politely. "Thank you." The drone didn't reply but tilted its head. Then, it slowly backed out of the room. Queen Jelenka stood on a high platform watching everything below. Her mind was linked to the hive, feeling the thoughts of thousands of drones at once. But today, there was something strange in her thoughts. Uncertainty. She had seen many creatures before, traders, slaves, enemies, but never had one spoken her language. Never had one stood with pride in front of her and asked to teach. She wanted to understand, not because she trusted them, but because something inside her felt unsettled. She summoned her advisor drone. "Bring the humans," she said. "Let us see what they mean by teaching." In the center of the hive, a crowd of drones gathered. The queen sat on her throne of stone and silk. The humans were brought forward. Elias stood tall. He looked around at the curio, his eyes watching from every wall and tunnel. "You asked to see what makes humans different," he said loudly, "so I'll show you." He took a small device from his belt, a data tablet. He pressed a button, and a small light projected into IOQ, the air. It showed a 3D image of a human child building a tower from blocks. Then the image changed. The tower fell, and the child laughed and started again. "This is human learning," Elias said. "We try. We fail. We try again. We do not stop because we fall. We rise." A drone in the crowd clicked quietly. Another tilted its head. Jelenka raised an arm. "Failure is weakness." Elias turned to her. "That's what the Dominion believes. That's why they never grow. They only take. They only destroy." She narrowed her eyes. "And humans do not destroy?" "We can," Elias admitted. "But we also create." He changed the image. Now the light showed a human painting. Then, a starship being built, then people dancing on Earth. The queen said nothing, but she didn't look away. One drone stepped forward. It was smaller than the others, with blue markings. "I do not understand," the drone said slowly in broken standard. "Why build if it can be taken?" Elias knelt so he was at eye level. "Because what we build becomes part of us. A hive fights to live. We fight to mean something." The drone paused, then nodded. Later that day, Elias and Ramos sat by the wall, resting. "You think they're really listening?" Ramos asked. Elias watched two drones practicing how to stack stones into patterns. "They're more than listening. They're wondering. That's the first step." Suddenly, an alarm echoed through the hive. A loud buzzing filled the air. The queen arrived with her guards. "Another hive approaches," she said. "They do not respect this one's choices. They say we are corrupted by humans." Elias stood. "What will you do?" "We will defend," Jelenka said coldly. "And if we fall, the lesson ends." Elias nodded slowly. Then he looked at her directly. "Then let us help you fight." She stared at him, confused. "You are weak." "Few. Injured," she said. "But clever," Elias replied. "Let us show you what humans do best. Adapt." The queen didn't speak. but something flickered in her eyes. Not anger, not fear, interest. That night, Elias gathered his crew and some curious drones. On the floor of the chamber, he drew maps, using glowing dust. He taught them how to lay traps in the jungle, how to use shadows, how to make the ground itself fight back. The drones listened, they watched, and they learned. In the dark tunnels of Velthara, something old began to shift. A queen watched, a soldier taught, and a hive started to think. The jungle moon. Velthara was alive with danger. From the distant mountains came a thunderous roar. A rival Ureth hive, larger and more ruthless, was marching to claim Zelenka's territory. They did not approve of her decision to spare humans. They saw weakness, and weakness invited destruction. Queen Zelenka stood on the edge of the hive, watching the enemy approach with a cold fury. Elias Grant stood beside her. His eyes scanned the jungle, planning every move. "This is not just a fight for land," Elias said quietly. "It is a fight for the hive's soul." Zelenka nodded. "Then we fight with more than claws and teeth." She looked at Elias with respect, but also with a question. "How do humans fight?" Elias smiled faintly. "We don't always fight like warriors. Sometimes we fight with our minds." The hive prepared for battle. Zelenka ordered her drones to build walls of thick vines and sharpened stones. But Elias knew this was not enough. He gathered a small group of drones and human survivors. "Listen carefully," he said. "We will not win by meeting the enemy head-on. They are stronger, but we are smarter." He taught the drones how to use the jungle itself as a weapon. "Set traps," he explained. "Dig pits covered by leaves. Use the noise of the jungle to confuse them. Hit fast, then hide." The drones listened carefully. Some were skeptical, others were eager to learn. Among them was the blue-marked drone, Aylin, who had shown curiosity in the Queen's Hall. "I do not understand," Aylin said. "How can hiding be strength?" "Because," Elias said, "strength is not always about power. Sometimes it is about patience, about knowing when to fight and when to wait." Night fell, and the enemy came. Thousands of black carapaces moved through the trees like a dark storm. The traps went off one by one. Hidden pits swallowed entire squads. Nets dropped from trees tangled the enemy's legs. Spears made from sharpened stones flew from the shadows. The rival hive was confused and terrified. Zelenka led her drones in swift strikes. But this time she did not fight alone. Elias and his small team moved through the jungle like ghosts, striking key points and disappearing before the enemy could respond. The battle raged for hours. The jungle echoed with the sounds of war. But slowly the enemy retreated. They had not expected this kind of fight. They had not expected a hive that thought. After the battle, Zelenka stood among the injured drones. She looked at Elias with new eyes. "You taught us to fight differently," she said softly. "Your ways are strange, but they work." Elias nodded. "Humans survive by changing. We do not rely on strength alone." The blue-marked drone Aylin approached. "Commander Elias," she said, "may I ask you a question?" "Of course. Your species. You say you learn from failure. But how do you find hope when so much is lost?" Elias looked up at the stars visible through the trees. "Hope," he said slowly, "is what keeps us moving when all else fails. It is the light we carry inside us." A silence followed. Then, the hive seemed to breathe as one. Days passed, and the hive began to change. Drones, who once only obeyed, now asked questions. They tested new ideas. The lines between soldier and thinker blurred. Zelenka realized something extraordinary was happening. The hive was becoming more than a mindless army, more than a collection of soldiers. It was becoming a living, growing community. One evening, Elias sat with Zelenka on her stone throne. "Your hive is strong," he said, "but it can be stronger if it learns to dream." "Dream?" she asked, curious. "Yes, dream. Imagine a future not ruled by war, but by creation. The queen's antennae twitched. Is this why you fight? To build peace? Elias smiled. Exactly. Zelenka looked out over the jungle. For the first time she whispered, I see a future worth fighting for. The air in the hive was heavy with tension. News had spread fast. Zelenka's choice to keep humans alive and learn from them was no longer just a secret among her drones. The Zarn Dominion, the great alien empire that ruled much of the galaxy, had heard. And they were angry. A message came, sharp and cold. Corrupt hive must be destroyed. Zelenka sat on her throne, her many eyes focused and hard. Her hive was divided. Some drones were proud to follow her new path. Others whispered that she was weak, that her trust in humans would bring ruin. Elias stood before her, weary but determined. What now? He asked. Zelenka's antennae twitched in thought. They will send their armies, she said slowly. We must prepare for war. But this time, not just with claws. Elias nodded. We will stand with you. A silence filled the chamber. Have a choice, Elias said quietly. We can leave and survive, or stay and fight beside you. Zelenka looked at him deeply. Why would you stay? She asked. Elias smiled faintly. Because we owe it nothing, and that is why it matters. She blinked in surprise. The queen had been bred to rule with power, to expect loyalty in exchange for strength. But Elias's words were different. They were free. Outside the hive, the jungle was calm, but the calm before a storm. Zelenka's drones trained harder than ever. They studied the tactics Elias taught, but also experimented on their own. The hive was no longer a single mind, it was a chorus of many voices. One day a drone named Koresh came to Elias. Commander, Koresh said with urgency, some of the hive fear your people. They believe humans bring destruction. Elias nodded. Fear is natural, but understanding will replace it. He began holding lessons with groups of drones. He told them stories of Earth, of human history, how humans had fallen and risen again, how they built despite pain. At first, some drones were doubtful, but slowly, curiosity grew. Zelenka observed all this with a mix of pride and worry. Her hive was changing, and so was she. One evening, as the glowing stars blinked above Velthara, the queen called Elias to her chamber. Tell me, she said, how do humans carry hope when everything seems lost? Elias thought carefully. Hope is a choice, he said. Even when darkness surrounds us, we choose to see light. That choice makes us strong. Zelenka's eyes softened. I wish my hive could learn that. They can, Elias said. You already taught them to question, that is the first step. A sudden alarm cut through the quiet. Zelenka rose sharply. The Dominion's fleet approaches, she said. They come to punish. Elias felt a cold weight in his chest. Then, we fight, he said. Together. The battle was fierce. The Zarn Dominion attacked with overwhelming force, ships in the sky, soldiers on the ground. But the hive was ready. Zelenka led her drones with new tactics. They moved with speed and surprise. They used traps, ambushes, and human strategies mixed with their own. Elias fought alongside them, shouting orders, helping wherever he could. The hive's unity was tested as never before. But even as they fought, the queen saw something strange in her soldiers' eyes. Not just fear or anger. Hope. After the battle, the hive was quiet but alive. Zelenka stood beside Elias on a high ridge, overlooking the moon's glowing forests. You chose to stay, she said softly. Elias nodded. Because sometimes the hardest choice is the one that changes everything. The queen's many eyes looked deep into his. Humans do strange things, she said, almost smiling. Because strange things are often the most powerful, Elias replied. In the distance, stars blinked softly. The war was far from over. But for the first time, Zelenka felt a flicker of something new. A future not just of survival, but of choice. The hive of Velthara was alive with a new kind of energy. It was no longer just the sound of marching feet or the clicking of commands. Now there were whispers of ideas, quiet questions, and even laughter. The drones had started to think for themselves. Queen Jelenka sat in her chamber, her many eyes watching the hives, changing patterns. The lines between soldier and thinker blurred. Drones, once content to obey, now tried to create. "Commander Elias," she said one day, "this change, it frightens some of my people. They say the hive should be one mind, not many." Elias smiled. "True strength comes from many minds working together. That is how humans survive." Jelenka looked thoughtful. "Humans can survive because they dream?" "Exactly." Elias pulled out a small box from his bag. He opened it to reveal a simple human tool, a music player. From it came soft melodies, songs full of hope and emotion. The Queen's antennae twitched in surprise. "Music," Elias explained, "is how we share feelings when words are not enough." He played the music softly. Some drones tilted their heads, listening. Then a young drone stepped forward, a blue-marked drone named Aylin. She moved closer to the sound and lifted a small stone, tapping it in rhythm. A smile almost appeared on Jelenka's face. "Humans can do that?" "Yes," Elias said. "We create beauty even in the darkest times." That night, Elias and his crew taught the drones something new: art. They showed how to use simple tools to draw, to build small sculptures from wood and stone. The drones learned quickly, fascinated by the strange human need to make things not useful for war, but for expression. Aylin became the leader of this new group. "Why do humans do this?" she asked Elias. "Because we believe the future can be better, because we imagine a world where war is not the only way." The hive began to change. Mothers sang lullabies to their young. Soldiers shared stories from the battlefields. The Queen even watched as drones created murals on the hive walls, images of stars, ships, and distant worlds. But change was not easy. Not all drones agreed. Some whispered that this new way made them weak, that the hive must remain focused on survival. Jelenka faced these challenges with strength. "We evolve," she told her people, "because standing still means death. Our minds must grow as our bodies do." Elias stood beside her. "Humans have faced more dangers than you can imagine," he said. "But hope and imagination kept us alive." The Queen looked at him, her many eyes wide. "For the first time in my life," she said softly, "I see a future beyond the hive." The news of the hive's transformation spread beyond Velthara. Other alien species began to watch with curiosity. Some sent envoys to learn from the corrupted hive, as the Dominion called it. Others prepared to strike, fearing a new kind of power. Elias knew the fight was far from over. But he also knew something important. This was no longer just a war of weapons, it was a war of ideas. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the jungle, Jelenka stood with Elias on a cliff overlooking the glowing hive. "Commander," she said quietly, "what will happen if the Dominion returns?" Elias smiled. "We will be ready. Because now we fight with more than claws. We fight with our minds and hearts." Jelenka nodded slowly. Her eyes shone with a new light. "Humans can do many things," she said. "But teaching a hive to dream, that is a power I never expected." The calm that had settled over Velthara shattered like glass. High above the jungle, the dark shapes of Dominion warships blotted out the stars. Their engines roared as they descended, ready to crush the corrupted Ureth hive that dared to ally with humans. Queen Jelenka stood at the edge of her hive's great hall. Her many eyes scanned the approaching fleet, but there was no fear in her gaze. Instead, there was something new: determination. Beside her, Commander Elias Grant tightened his grip on his weapon. "They come to end us," Elias said quietly. Jelenka nodded. "Then we will show them what we have become." The hive burst into action. Drones moved quickly, not like the single-minded soldiers they once were, but like a coordinated force of thinkers and fighters. Walls of vines were woven thicker, traps were sharpened, and the humans helped set up new strategies. The jungle itself seemed to rise with them. Elias led a team of humans and drones on a daring mission to sabotage the Dominion flagship. They moved silently through dark corridors, avoiding patrols and disabling security systems. "We have one chance," Elias whispered into his comm. "If we fail, the hive falls." With steady hands, they planted explosives near the ship's power core. As they turned to escape, alarms blared. They were discovered. Back on Velthara, the battle began. The Dominion forces stormed the hive with overwhelming numbers, but they were met with unexpected resistance. The Irith drones used the jungle traps, hit-and-run tactics, and even coordinated ambushes taught by humans. Jelenka fought alongside her warriors, no longer a distant ruler but a fierce protector. Her wings flashed as she moved through the battlefield, inspiring her drones to stand firm. Inside the Dominion flagship, Elias and his team raced against time. Explosives armed, they ran through narrow hallways as the ship shook with battle outside. "Get to the escape pods," Elias shouted. They barely made it before the ship erupted in flames. The explosion rocked the battlefield. The Dominion flagship was crippled, and their forces began to falter. The hive pressed their advantage, but the cost was high. Many drones lay, injured or dead. Elias stood beside Jelenka, breathing heavily. "This fight is not over," she said. "No," Elias agreed, "but we have shown them something they never expected." After the battle, a strange silence fell. The Dominion fleet retreated, surprised by the hive's new strength and unity. Jelenka gathered her drones in the Great Hall. "Today we fought not just for survival," she said, "but for our future." She looked at Elias. "Your people did not just teach us how to fight," she said. "They taught us how to think." Elias smiled. "That is what humans do best." News of the battle spread quickly. Other alien species began to reconsider their views of humans and the Ureth hive. Some sent envoys hoping to learn from this new alliance. Others watched in silence, waiting to see what would happen next. As night fell over Velthara, Jelenka stood beneath the stars with Elias. "The galaxy is changing," she said softly. "Yes," Elias replied, "and humans are ready to change with it." The Queen looked up, her eyes reflecting the distant stars. "Humans can do many things," she said quietly. "But what they have done here, it is beyond anything I imagined." The stars above Velthara shone brighter than ever. After the great battle, the moon's jungle hummed with new life. The Ureth hive had changed, forever, not just in strength but in spirit. Queen Jelenka stood on a high balcony overlooking the hive. Her many eyes reflected the distant lights of starships, ships from other worlds coming to see what had become of the corrupted hive. Beside her stood Commander Elias Grant, weary but proud. "Look," Elias said softly, pointing to the approaching ships. "The galaxy is watching." Jelenka nodded. "They come to learn." Days later, a grand assembly was held in the heart of the hive. Representatives from many alien species gathered. Some came with suspicion, others with hope. The Queen stepped forward. "Once my hive lived only to fight," she said, her voice steady. "We believed strength came from power alone, but that is not true." She looked at Elias. "Humans showed us another way, a way to think, to dream, and to choose." The crowd was silent. Then slowly, applause filled the hall. Not the loud clapping of humans, but the respectful clicking of thousands of drones. After the assembly, Jelenka accepted an invitation to visit Earth. She traveled with Elias aboard a human starship, crossing the stars she had only seen in dreams. When they landed, she was amazed. Children ran through green fields, people laughed, danced, and built machines that seemed like magic. At a science fair, a young girl proudly displayed a model of a quantum computer. Jelenka watched quietly as the child explained how it worked. For a long moment, the queen's many eyes opened wide. Humans can do that? She whispered. Elias smiled. Yes, we can do many things. Back on Velthara, the hive continued to grow and learn. The drones painted murals, composed music, and shared stories. The line between warrior and artist blurred. The queen often thought about the future, not just for her hive, but for the galaxy. If humans could teach even a hive of fierce warriors to dream, what else was possible? One evening, Elias and Zelenka sat beneath the stars. The Dominion will return someday, Elias said. But now we are ready. Zelenka nodded. The future is no longer just about survival. It is about choice. She looked at Elias with a calm strength. Humans came as enemies, but they became teachers. And friends, Elias added. They both smiled. Across the galaxy, something had changed. The story of the human and the alien queen spread, a tale of hope, courage, and the power to change. It was a reminder to all species. Strength is not only in claws or weapons. True strength is in the heart, the mind, and the will to choose a better path.